Hi, this is Heidi from Snappy Tots. Thanks for joining me to start our countdown to Christmas wall hanging. I hope you will enjoy this project. We are going to start by making the white rectangle that is in the middle, and for that you're going to need an H hook and whatever white or off-white yarn you're going to use. Mine is made with Red Heart Super Saver Soft White. We're going to start by creating a chain of 71. All right, I have a chain of 71, and now I'm going to work a single crochet in my second chain from the hook and in each chain across, and that will give me 70 stitches. So I'm going to skip that first chain and work into the second, and then just in each chain across until I have my 70 stitches. I'm just inserting my hook, pulling up the yarn, and pulling through. Our first single crochet row is complete, and we're ready for a row of half double crochet. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn, and I'm going to work my first half double crochet in the same stitch as my turning chain, so right here at the base. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook in that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all. Now, some people think of the chain as the beginning stitch and then work into this as their first. But by doing that, it leaves a big gap. And so I like to just work it right in the base, and I don't count this beginning chain at the beginning of each row. I don't count that chain 2 as my first stitch. I just ignore that. Now, another thing you can also do, I actually prefer this way, but not everybody does, so it's up to you, is I like to do just chain 1 and then the half double crochet in that same first stitch. And what this does is it keeps my edges straighter, so I don't have the chain 2 creating kind of a little bulge out here on the side. Now, since we're going to be adding a border, it's not going to be as noticeable because the border is going to really straighten those up. So it's up to you whether you want to do a chain 1 and half double crochet in that same stitch or a chain 2. And I'm going to just do a half double crochet in each stitch across, and for this whole entire center piece, the white rectangle in the middle, we are going to have 70 stitches each row. So make sure that you get all those stitches in. So I've got my first one in that same stitch as so I did my turning chain, then right there at the base of that, and then in each one across and all the way across to the end. And I'm just going to keep repeating that step. So each step I'm just going to chain 2 or chain 1 if you prefer, half double crochet in each one across, and keep going back and forth until I have the right amount of rows. Have you ever noticed that when you work double crochet and half double crochet back and forth in rows, meaning you work to the end of the row this way, then you flip the piece over, and then you work back across the row, that it creates these ridges? See if you can see. Creates these little ridges. So it puts one row up higher than the next row, and then up and then down. So you've got little mountains and valleys. Okay. Or have you ever had a pattern call for you to work your stitch, your half double crochet or your double crochet between the posts? Well, what does that even mean? So a few years ago, a really awesome lady named Jennifer Hatched with Love, Jennifer Hatched with Love, suggested that you work these stitches between the posts, and then that eliminates these little up and down, this up and down fabric. And then I've noticed a few other people do the same thing, and so a couple of years ago I started doing that, and I just love it. It makes a denser fabric. Here it is, worked the same way. So it's a half double crochet. This is a half double crochet. I'm making another one of these. This is my advent calendar. I'm doing another one, so it's the exact same thing, but I'm working this one instead of just regular half double crochet. I'm working this one between the posts of the previous row, and so it still has a thicker area. It still creates, you know, like a ridge through it, but the fabric is more dense, so it's a stronger fabric, whereas this is, you know, a much softer fabric, and you can see through the stitches more than this one. But it's really fairly flat, whereas this one goes up and down. So let me lay those on top of each other again so you can kind of see the difference. I really like this. So whenever I can, I try to use this technique, but I do get quite a few questions of, what do you mean work this between the posts, and where are these posts, and what am I supposed to do? So as I was working this, I thought, you know what, this is the perfect opportunity to show you and explain kind of what I mean about working between the posts. And I apologize for it being a cream color, which isn't always the easiest to see, especially with the cream color with the white background, but it's what I'm working on, so hopefully it works okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm working in half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over, and normally there's the stitch, and I would normally insert my hook right there, pull up a loop, and there it is, worked in the stitch. Here's the ones before that, worked in the posts, between the posts. So what that means is yarn over, and instead of inserting it in the stitch, you'd go just a little below that and in between those two posts. See, here's the stitch. Just lift up that bottom yarn bar that goes across there, and I'm just going to insert it right there and pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through. So see the difference. I'm actually working, here's the two posts from the previous row, and then I'm going to work there. So let me tilt this down and see if we can get an even better look at this. So usual half double crochet, there's my stitch. I would work it there. But to work in the between the posts, I'm going to go the same place as if I was working into the stitch. I'm just going to lift up that bar and work between the posts. So I'm just like, oh, I skipped that. I'm going to go right between the posts and pull up a loop. So again, yarn over, lift up that bar. What I'm talking about, the bar, is here's where the stitch is, and it has a yarn bar go across there. I'm just going to poke that out of the way and find my two posts and just insert my hook there. So I'm just going to keep working that across. Now, a lot of the time when I'm doing this, I like to work my first and my last stitch in the stitch. All right, as I get to the end of the row, I like to work my beginning and end stitches usually in the stitch. Sometimes I don't, and I'll say that in a pattern, but let me show you if I am going to finish in the stitch. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm still working between the posts. So here's where it would be if it was a stitch. I'm going to go just below that between the two posts. From this row, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through again. So then I have one stitch left. If I'm going to work the last one between the posts like I have been, I'm just going to pull those two posts apart and I'm just going to work right there. But I'm going to end it with working in the stitch for the end, and it just gives it a nice clean edge. I mean, look how straight. It's just a nice straight edge. I really like the look of that. So then I'm going to chain one and turn, and on this stitch, when I'm working between the posts, I like to just chain one when I do the half double crochet, because the first one I'm working in the stitch, And then I'm dropping down. And so my row height is just a little bit shorter. And I really like that because like I said, look how straight that is. And that's all with just a chain one going down the side, then working the first half double crochet in the stitch. And then each one after that is between the posts. And so I think it just gives it just a nice smooth, even texture. So I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoy working that. It makes a great dishcloth also because it, like I said, it's just a nice dense fabric. So good luck, and I hope that helps. As you're working the half double crochet, which is the whole big, huge, giant rectangle piece, you can do it a couple of ways. The first one I made, I just did regular half double crochet in the stitch, and you can see just like normal when you work back and forth in rows, it creates like high points and low points as you change back and forth. So what I'm doing this time is I'm working my half double crochet between the posts of the previous row. I have started doing this and I really like this way because it makes a stronger, more dense fabric, and it is more flat and it just holds its shape better. This first one I did, it's still fine. You can still do it that way, but as you can tell, like looking at it from an angle, you can see through the stitches more than you can with this one. And so I'm going to show you how to do that because I get questions every once in a while. People just have kind of a hard time seeing this sometimes. So if I was working a regular half double crochet, I would work it right there. There's my stitch. There's my next stitch. But I'm going to work this between the posts of the previous row. So there's the posts. So if I'm going to normally work it, there's the stitch, but I'm going to drop down, not clear down. I'm just going to go right between those two posts. So as I look at it, here's the stitch, and there's a little yarn bar right there that divides the stitch from the space between the two. I'm just going to go right underneath in between those two posts and work my half double crochet. So if you just, as you go along, just go, okay, I'm going to go between those two posts, and there it is. And this is especially helpful like if you're working with blanket yarn or like a novelty yarn that's kind of hard to see the stitches. I'll work between those two posts because you can feel it, and it's just a natural place, especially with those yarns. It just works out really great. So it just drops it down, and it still creates, you know, little heavy, not quite ridges. You can still see that, but it's not up and down as much as if you're working a regular in the stitch. So then I usually end my rows and begin my rows in the stitch. Sometimes I don't, and I'll make note of that on my pattern, whether I'm just going to have you finish. If I was going to finish off this row between posts, I would put it right there. But I'm just going to insert it right in the stitch, and there it is. And it just creates such a nice straight edge. I mean, look how straight that is on both sides. It's just a beautiful edge, I think. So then I'm going to just chain one and turn. So when I'm working between the posts, I start with a chain one because it's a little bit lower placement anyway. And so I work the first half double crochet in the stitch, and then see I drop down just a little bit. I'm just going right below, here's where the stitch would be, and just right below there, but it just lowers my row height a tiny bit. But I just think there it is with a chain one and then a half double crochet in the first stitch, and then between the posts all the way across. And you can do it either way you want, but this is the way I'm working this one. And I've noticed as I've counted my rows this way between the posts and on the original one that I did, it's just a tiny bit different. So I may have to end up doing one more row or something at the end to get the measurements, but I'm just going to keep watching my measurements and making sure that I fit what the pattern says. And I just wanted to give you that tip. And yes, this is the most monotonous crochet ever. Same stitch, same color, but it's going to be a really nice background for our tree and all of our ornaments. They'll really be able to pop and stand out. Oh my gosh, I have been working on just the center rectangle for what seems like all afternoon. And now I'm sitting here waiting for Hayden to get out of his trumpet lesson, and it's hot. And I'm working on this boring piece, and I just want it to be done. It's gonna be wonderful, so it's worth it, right?